I think there's absolutely no difference at all.
You agree with that?
I do, and I also think that when you're scoring a documentary, at least for me, I feel a tremendous responsibility to the content, to the characters, to the filmmaker, to really immerse myself and try to understand what the purpose of the film is, what the message of the film is, the narrative. And there are some things that are slightly different, which is that there usually are many less musical feature moments where the music is carrying everything. Generally, you know, we would be providing a musical narrative, a through line for the film, and also tying together lots of disparate elements, you know, from archival footage to interviews to verite, and making it feel like one cohesive narrative. So in some ways, we're doing a little more work in a much quieter way to be able to keep the story going, to you know, enhance whatever the sequence is. Right. And we do a lot of beds. I mean, people are talking. And so I've kind of developed this way of having beds that evolve musically and still have musical integrity, but aren't really, they're all kind of into a sort of a, you know, they don't have things that stick out and get noticed the way you might in other kinds of music.
Right.
On that thought, Cartel Land is a doc, and Zipper is a narrative. And I think that the way you emotionally connect to the creative process is the same. It's, you know, but the differences for me between a doc and a narrative is narratives have a more rich tradition of vocabulary, of film music vocabulary, that you have to be aware of, whether you are ditching that vocabulary or embracing parts of it. I think documentaries are more the wild, wild west of music. Anything is possible, and there are some principles in documentary, like what you were saying. You can't step on the dialogue, but I think there's more sort of opportunity to sort of forge just completely new territory. And if you're doing that in a narrative feature, completely blind to what came before, I think it can be a little bit dangerous. I think you have to recognize the history of what's been going on in film music.
I would say also, like, keying on what Miriam said and the responsibility that you hold to the people. That was something I was really unprepared for in the back half of the experience of the filmmaking, is being at Sundance with the Life According to Sam. That year I had a narrative and a doc, and it's a truly strange and moving and awesome thing to sit in a movie theater filled, that film being about somebody truly fighting for their life, and they've got their whole family there, and they've got the organization behind them, and you're just kind of going, holy crap, this is real. You know what I mean? Narrative is real, but then just sit in that room, it really gives you chills in a way that's cool.
There can be times when music can really help an audience move through difficult material, and you can choose to speed things up. Or let's say I worked on a film called Ghosts of Abu Ghraib, which was about torture. And but there's times when you don't want the audience to feel downtrodden by it. You want to help them move through the story. You want them to be outraged, but not necessarily depressed, you know. So you have to calibrate the score. And a score can really, you know, I don't think it's the documentary that's dry. I think it's calibrating the emotional content of the narrative and how you're going to see the whole film holistically to give them a varied experience over time that allows them to get all the way to the end without slitting their wrists, you know.
And I also want to add that in Aaron Copland's Essays on Film Music, Aaron Copland says that all film music is expectation. So that all Aaron Copland's argument about film music is that all film music does is it toys with your audience's expectation for what's about to happen and how comfortable they should feel.
Do you agree with that, everybody?
Yes, pretty much, yeah.
That would be yes.
Also, you know, music can't save a bad movie. It just can't.
Well, it can keep it breathing.
I mean, you know, right, exactly. But, you know, if a film isn't up to par, then for whatever reasons, the sort of mind behind that movie is not going to guide the score in a way, you know, it's just, you can only do so much. And so I think that's also a challenge for us when you're trying to make a living at this, you know, deciding between what projects you take and you don't, and if you find yourself working on something that you don't believe in and it's not authentic, and you got to pay the rent and those types of situations. I think that's when you wind up with the dry stuff. But if there's something in there you can pull from and be inspired from, you'll do something cool.
I think that in a documentary, I like what you're saying about a responsibility, and I think that you can't, in a narrative, you can push the emotion. You may not want to, but you can. You can manipulate the audience. You can change the whole meaning of a scene with music, and I've had directors ask me to do that. But in a documentary, you can't do that, because if the audience become aware that they're being manipulated by music, then they lose faith in what the story is, and so you have to really. I think it's actually a much more difficult discipline. You have to really pinpoint the exact emotion and get it completely right.